and welcome back to the 001 Radio Gamescast. It's just Wyatt and I today. You know, nobody else could make it.
Hey, wait a minute.
No one else. Oh, no!
They're there. They're just gremlins in the in cyberspace as new computers have shot their gremlins at Alex.
I've been zapped.
How does it feel to have PC technical problems?
You're now our
As
man in the chair.
me?
The technical problem is I don't have a camera.
Too used to use a
That is a
laptop. All
problem.
right. Let's talk about the topic for today. First of all, I do want to mention we've got some video game news. We don't tend to cover a lot of video game like news items. There just hasn't actually been a ton happening. But I do want to mention one thing, because it's the October season, and we always do a Halloween episode at the end of the month. We like to have an episode where we talk about just random horror games or Halloween-themed games as broadly as we can. I know myself, I'm planning on playing Alan Wake 2. I'm curious, has everyone picked their like Halloween-y game?
My original
Or games?
plan.
There's no
my
requirement
original
to finish
plan-
anything, but
Yeah, my original plan is I wanted to try and complete Resi 4 remake, because that's kind of what I've
which is excellent.
been wanting to do. However, Castlevania games have completely overtaken my life right now. So I don't know. Maybe I'll try and get some Resi 4 in there. I have no idea because all I'm playing is Castlevania games and the finals right now.
Good set of games, and hopefully some Dragon Age.
All
right, Alex and Alex, have either of you got horror or Halloween-y games that you two are excited to play this month?
I need to go
Not a
looking. I haven't been in a horror mood recently. I don't know. I'm not sure what I need to do to get it back into one.
Watch some Blumhouse movies. You'll probably get there.
Or we watch Alien.
Oh man,
Yeah.
and you can play Alien Isolation. That's a great game.
But hey, there's a good
Um,
example.
I think almost every October I come and play a little bit of Dead by Daylight at least. It's not like
Oh yeah.
I don't know if is it a horror game? It's kind of a horror game. It's weird.
Sure.
I almost
It
always-
is
I was-
Halloween
multiplayer game.
themed, whether or not
I
it's a horror
love
game.
playing as the killer in that
Yeah.
game, and I'm not like crazy into it like some people are, but it's a game I play every few months and definitely almost every October.
All right. Well, the reason
yeah.
I brought that up is because, at least for me, there was a remake that is coming out just around the bend that I think all of us have been like a little nervous about, and as with the rest of the internet, that has gotten reviews. This is Silent Hill 2 remake by Bloober, which we've played a couple of Bloober games in the past, and generally had like middling things to say, I would think. Not really anything super bad, but a lot of just,
Some of us have very strong feelings on Bloober Team.
Brett has very strong feelings on Bloober Team.
Yes.
And on remaking Silent Hill 2 as a concept, because that game, according to him, is already perfect. I would not know, but I haven't played it, but many people have had that opinion, and we're worried that the remake was going to be really bad, and then it came out and has been getting straight nines, basically, and extremely well received. So that's getting added to my list. I don't know if I'll be able to check it out this October, but I'm hoping to get more into that. And I think that's a very good sign for our horror game fans to get some more cool stuff, and hopefully an actual new game and not just remakes, because there's been a lot of horror remakes, as good as both apparently the Silent Hill 2 remake and RE4 remake are.
Dead Space.
And Dead Space. It's a lot of remakes. I would love a new one in any of these franchises.
And as I've always said before, when you get remakes of a franchise that's been long dormant for a while, that tends to mean that there's a new game around the corner, and something like a remake or a remaster or something like that. It tends to be like testing the waters to see like, hey, are people still interested in this older IP that we have? So
Yeah.
it's usually
Alright.
what that means. But
Well, speaking of some older IPs, Wyatt, you've given us a segue into the proper topic of the episode, which is the Nintendo Switch 2. This hasn't been announced. We know nothing about a potential Nintendo Switch 2.
there's been
but this-
some leaks.
This thing has been rumored for so long. There have been various like leaks over the course of time. what the actual state of this, I think none of us properly know, but
The only thing that we do know is that Nintendo has said it's coming next year and we're announcing it this year, I believe.
Yeah.
That's like all we know. We don't
they've
know any
hinted that they're announcing
specifics.
it this year. I don't think they've actually
That's
said
true.
they are.
That's true.
There
have been leaks, apparently by people who are like leakers that tend to have a very clean track record in terms of like accurate information, but there's still leaks.
Yeah, I
So
mean, many times extremely out of date, so we don't know
Yeah.
really what it's going to look like. But we've gathered here today to put together our wish list, and I would say some predictions for what the Switch 2 is going to look like, as well as games we're going to get. Because I think Nintendo's put themselves in a strange position lately, in that they're starting to do the thing they did on like the GameCube era of games, and just put out things. Just like lots of... There was a stretch over like the Wii U to most of the Nintendo Switch's lifespan where Nintendo, as a like first party publisher, was putting out extremely few games. But now we're getting things like we're getting like tons of WarioWare stuff. We're getting Super Mario Party, Jamboree. We're getting
We had
a new
another Zelda
Mario and
game.
Luigi game. We're getting multiple Zelda games quickly together. Kind of insane. Very strange period of time. Metroid Prime 4 is on the horizon.
Oh,
So
man,
I
I
think
forgot about that.
yeah, I think we're in a weird state for Nintendo where it's kind of anything goes right now, it seems. Which I'm at least hopeful for. I'm hoping we see some stuff that we maybe haven't seen for a while. That actually is very cool. Okay, so Nintendo Switch 2. First of all, I want to know from everybody, what are we expecting for like Nintendo to put out a successor to the Nintendo Switch? What does it take for you all to buy it? Including if you don't have a
console-
Switch, right? Like, what would make you want one?
A console that can run its own games at a frame rate that doesn't make me vomit.
That's a great answer.
I was gonna say that. I think that's
a great answer.
almost everyone's number one wish.
Yeah, that's kind of the big thing. Like the biggest, I would say, like just common thing. People want more juice for whatever new Nintendo console's coming out. Because
Yeah.
really, when you look at it, the Switch's hardware was not that much more powerful than the Wii U. So it's not only one console generation behind. You could make a very good argument that it's two console generations
Yeah.
behind everything else right now.
I don't. To me, it's an upgrade above the Wii U, but the Wii U was already
Yeah, the Wii U
hardly
was
an upgrade over the Wii.
barely above. It was enough to be HD, but it was not on the level of like a PS4 or Xbox One.
And the Wii in and of itself was like basically just a
it was
repurposed
still
GameCube.
480p.
Yeah.
At the time. So
Which, like,
Oh,
to
really?
me at the
Huh.
time, I did
yeah,
not
we
care.
did not have an HD
but-
output for a long time. I believe it got one at some point, but not every game could use it. And
What an
whatnot.
upgrade.
I had
It
no
is
idea
weird
about
to think about, right? Because Nintendo hasn't recently it's been Nintendo's MO of like, hey, we're going to release hardware that's not as powerful as the competition, but we're going to do some really wacky things with hardware, right? That wasn't always the case. I would say up until the GameCube, they were actually a lot of the time on the bleeding edge of whatever technology for consoles that there were at the time. Maybe with the exception of like cartridges for the Nintendo 64, which had more to do with piracy than actual like technology.
Yeah.
So it's just it's they've taken such a strange shift in the last, probably just because of the success of the Wii, that they tend to use older.
Yeah, they've had a
hardware.
lot of success, more than like any other manufacturer, with their handhelds as well. So I think the Switch in particular is trying to capitalize on that market too, because
Yeah, I mean, to me, there is no way that the Switch 2 is not a handheld.
no, I agree.
I think that's a safe bet, is that this like this kind of hybrid console, I think, is too unique to let go. And I think it's still, even though we've had a lot of handheld PCs now and a lot of handheld stuff recently, I still think, because it's a first party Nintendo system,
Yeah.
I still think it has its own unique kind of niche. And especially if they want to continue with detachable Joy-Cons as extra controllers and stuff, I still think it has that kind of unique edge over handheld PCs.
Do you guys think the Switch 2 is going to get any bigger?
Minimally, it definitely could.
I could see it going for a screen with less of a bezel to like have a bigger screen, but not necessarily be a larger.
Because I feel like
I currently use a Switch OLED. I don't really need the screen to be that much bigger than it already is. At least for a handheld console,
I feel
it's a good size.
I feel like at the size it is with the hardware, it's on the verge of not really being considered a handheld console for me. Like, I'd rather just dock it. I also don't consider like an iPad a handheld type thing.
Yeah, neither
either.
And well, like, look, we got comparisons here.
That's
so I got
a laptop.
This is my Switch OLED.
Jesus Christ!
It's got fancy controllers. These are actually these are cheaper than the regular Joy-Cons, but they're good for travel. But with the regular ones, like, it's just like a brick. It's a nice little brick. Compare that to like
screen
the size of the
OLED
Steam Deck.
Slightly bigger.
Yeah, the whole console is a little bit wider and a little bit just taller, and the screen is bigger because there's way less bezel involved.
Yeah,
but it really isn't that much of a bigger system.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know that they could get much bigger than this without it no longer really being a easily puttable in a bag or case thing. Because even like those little controller things that I have make it vastly less portable than it is just with its regular setup here. Yeah. Where like this is way more portable than...
It's not pocketable, but I mean, get a carrying case for it and throw it in your bag, and you still have plenty of space for other things.
To be fair,
it's still very...
I love that we're having this conversation now as I have like 6 handhelds on my desk because I was going through a thing. I have PS Vita just sitting ready to go.
Little show and tell.
Look, PS Vita is my perfect size for a thing like that, but...
Didn't you also find like a handheld console that mimics the look of the PS Vita?
Yeah, there's Ioneo has a console called the Odin 2, and there's a mini version of it that is roughly, it's a little bit bigger than a PS Vita, but it's the same sort of like design style. Very cool console, very expensive. The thing with the Odin, cool thing, I think that's kind of the goal mark for the Switch 2 to hit, is to be around the power of those devices. Because they have relatively powerful chips, and people might point out and go like, Odin, I mean, Switch emulation is not a thing that I condone, but people use Switch emulation as a sort of guide stick for how powerful a thing is, because it's sort of like the in-between between like modern console and retro emulation, where Switch is like pretty powerful, but the emulation is, I mean, Ryujinx just got shut down, so all the emulation of Switch that was being developed is stopped. Anything that's being developed is new. But like, that's a good measuring stick for the rough power of a console, is whether or not it could do Switch emulation, and that thing could. So you kind of have a level of it there.
I remember a time not that long ago. I've never been quite as harsh on the power of the Switch, though I really would like something more powerful. But there was some game that released, whether it was Metroid Dread maybe, or potentially. I think it was Metroid Dread that I remember specifically. Like, I saw people online talking about, like, why would I buy Metroid Dread when it runs better emulated on, like,
you might have been thinking about Link's Awakening.
Link's Awakening potentially too. I think
Metroid Dread actually, I think, runs from me playing Metroid Dread, it runs extremely well. Like, I would say that runs like a pretty locked frame rate. But
two games that I've discovered do not run well that I think, especially in 2024, is kind of unacceptable, right? Cult of the Lamb runs at 30 frames, barely runs at 30 frames.
Yeah, it like barely makes
shocking.
it too.
Another one is I think only Ryan has played this, but Black Skylands is like a 2D like top-down pixel art thing. Apparently does not run very well on the Nintendo Switch. Just like the simplest things that the Switch should get right. Like,
and to be fair, those are third-party games that could be falling prey to like bad optimizations. But I think when you look at Nintendo first-party stuff, or Nintendo like what I would call a second-party developer, developers that Nintendo regularly works with for like Mario, for Legend of Zelda, for Pokemon, Game Freak, this Retro, I forget the studio that made
Level 5?
Echoes of Wisdom. Level 5, they don't tend to publish for Nintendo. Or Nintendo doesn't tend to publish Level 5, but Level 5 does make a lot of games, and I would say falls under this category. They make a lot of games that are like designed around the hardware and still do not run well.
Yeah.
Despite there being very good looking. Echoes of Wisdom's frame rate in the overworld is just like unacceptable. Like it is
It's
not.
really bad sometimes.
It is so
There are-
bad.
So overall, especially the original Breath of the Wild, I'm pretty impressed with the performance of it, but there are spots like the Deku tree that always drop frames. And that problem is even worse in I'm forgetting the name of it. Breath of the
You
Wild
know,
2.
You know what console
Tears of the
I
Kingdom.
feel like
Here's the Kingdom, thank you.
I can't ever recall having any frame drops on, no matter the game that was in it. The DS and 3DS.
Yeah, they were good. They had good quality control in terms of like.
I think they also they had such a hard limit on those that developers
you weren't trying to
knew-
port a game to the 3DS. You were making
Exactly.
it for the 3DS, whereas a lot of people do
Exactly.
try to port things to the
Oh,
Switch.
yeah.
I think in terms of what the Switch 2 needs to do, right? I think what needs to happen here is the dock needs to act in a way as like an eGPU or like an external GPU. I
Mhm.
really think it is 100%
Or
understandable
at least like an
that if you
external
have
cooler or something that can like make
something,
it capable
yeah.
of running better.
Which I listen, I'm not a hardware engineer. I don't know how feasible anything I'm about to say is, right? It's just
I know I've heard of similar things done before.
well, and eGPUs are a thing. I haven't really experienced them myself, but I know that they're like fairly common, at least nowadays. And they can be plugged in with as few cables as just one USB-C cable right into your laptop or your PC or whatever you need. I think it is more than understandable that if you have a tablet as your gaming console, it's not gonna go toe to toe with a PS5 Pro. Like
Yeah,
it just is
not an
what it is. But
expectation.
I think when it's docked, I think it really does need some sort of like eGPU or something like that. Like performance modes have become a really common thing for console games now. There's like a quality, 30 FPS quality mode, there's a 60 FPS performance mode, whatever.
Yeah, what does quality or performance mode mean for that kind of stuff?
So quality mode is it runs at 30 frames per second, but it typically adds ray tracing, higher, textures, just it's a
4K,
nicer
if it's a
looking game,
4K
4K.
game.
And performance mode is usually like 1080p, sometimes 1440, no ray tracing typically, and it just runs at 60 frames. I think the Switch could really do with something like that, where you have a handheld mode that kind of locks whatever game you're playing, especially if it's larger, first party, 3D, whatever, 30 frames per second. But if you're in docked mode, I think there should be some added power so that you could play other games, say a Zelda follow-up, whatever next Mario game they're working on, at a higher frame rate.
I also think it would be really beneficial to look at how the Steam Deck handles that stuff. Because I don't think you want quite as many levels of like tuning as you can do to the Steam Deck, because it's a little complicated for your average, I think, person that would want to buy a Switch and not have to deal with.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
I feel like Switch absolutely should be plug and play.
But
yeah, I'm not saying that you have
something that tons of people do with the Steam Deck is they lock it to 40 frames, because the Steam Deck typically is capable of 60, but it drains a lot of battery. So 40 is kind of the sweet spot of, you can tell you're playing it on a handheld, but it still feels good to play and isn't hitching or getting locked up anywhere. I feel like that would be a good target for the Switch 2, is to like, because I think they're showing that they cannot reliably hit 60. In fact, the Switch often cannot reliably hit 30. And I think they need to aim for somewhere that they can make with a handheld. And for me, that would be like the at least locked 30, but ideally 40 to 60 is the great space to be in.
Yeah. Here there is one thing, going off of power a little bit, it's a little bit tangentially related. Possibly some disagreement. I believe the current screen resolution for both the Switch and the Switch OLED is 720p. I think that's actually totally fine if they want to keep it relatively the same size. Because I think
the Steam Deck is
1080p
only 800p as well, which is just because it's 1610 and not 16:9.
I think at 720p on a screen that small, if they're going to keep it around the same size, looks totally fine. I think 1080p at sizes like that, you really just is spent, performance in an area where you really don't need it.
Yeah, I mean, if they can get it, why not? But like, they're already struggling to get it on the current gen, so
it's completely unnecessary. Like at that screen size, like, yeah, if I'm on my monitor and I'm looking at something that's in 720p, it's gonna look a little chunky. It's gonna look a little crusty. but something on the size of a Switch screen, 720p, looks actually quite crisp, and it looks totally fine. So I think it has that advantage of like, hey, put some more juice in there, keep the same resolution.
Yeah.
You're still looking at a pretty decent kind of performance bump.
Because
there,
that's
hopefully.
the interesting thing to me is a lot of people have been thinking, especially early in the Switch 2 sort of rumor mill cycle, like last year or the year before, people were thinking this was going to be like the 4K Switch. And at least to me, that's like, I could see that being possible, but at the price point that Nintendo probably wants to sell it for and the goals that they have, it feels really unnecessary.
Completely.
I really doubt that's Nintendo's intention.
And I'll specify not as
seen.
4K in a handheld mode, but 4K when it's docked. Which, like, yeah, I can see ways of achieving that, especially if they go like the checkerboarded route, like a lot of early PS5 and Xbox Series stuff did.
Checkerboarded?
It's a way of combining basically half the resolution of 4K to work really well. That makes it's fake 4K, but it's pretty fake 4K. It's basically they need to hit a set resolution to be able to do checkerboarding, which is probably doable, but I'm not sure. The thing that we've had here is like Switch 2 rumors have been floating around for a long time. It's probably going to be based on some type of mobile chip from manufacturers, which means that they're kind of bounded by whatever is being done by NVIDIA and AMD in that form factor.
There's pretty impressive chips being used in.
Well, yeah, like if it used the same thing as the Steam Deck, even then I think it would
powerful.
be doing great. But I think that then what we're looking at is like, what would the price point for this console be? Because I think everyone needs this. Like, I think it is a need for Nintendo to have this to be able to run their first-party games at a locked frame rate. Whether that is 30 or 60, we have to get to the point where we can run Tears of the Kingdom and Echoes of Wisdom at locked 30 minimum, ideally 60.
Let's say there's backwards compatibility, which I think it absolutely should be there. Like, keep the cartridge, there's
no reason to really change it, because it's a great
no reason
method.
to change it. I would if we sorry, I can't even think. If we get a Switch 2 and you pop in Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom and it runs not any noticeably better than the previous Switch, I would be so sad.
I would say the console shouldn't exist at that point.
Yeah. I want to be able to play Tears of the Kingdom natively at least 40 frames per second on my Switch someday in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I would on a Switch predecessor. I would love that so much. Successor.
Like the fact that people are even attempting to emulate the Switch is crazy to me, and it's because it's so underpowered that people want to play games that have issues on it with a frame rate that is better.
I weirdly think it's a testament to the games they're putting out on Switch. Being unique, because otherwise this console wouldn't be so successful. Yeah. It's an underpowered console.
The problem is now like Nintendo themselves is running into that issue. It's no longer just a third-party issue. It's they're hitting up the limit of what they can do with this.
Where I started to notice like the performance really starting to affect me was like I accepted very early on first-party 3D games are not gonna run the best on the Switch, and I made my peace with that. Right, this was before Echoes of Wisdom, where it's like, why is it running this horribly? But then what the Switch became to me, other than my way of playing, first party Nintendo titles, was it's a great indie game machine. It's a great way to play 2D indie games. It's a great way to play, especially it is tailor made for roguelikes in a way that I just think no other platform.
But now I have to question if the 2D roguelikes are going to run well.
That's the problem. That's where I hit the performance wall, is like, oh wow, this 2D pixel art game no longer runs at 60 frames per second on a modern day like gaming console. It's not good.
With my experience with it, I have Dead Cells both on PC and Switch. I've experienced within memory like 2 or 3 hitches in frame rate and stuff, but it hasn't been like
Dead Cells runs
too common on that
Switch. Yeah.
I mean, I would say
that's the best running 2D game that I have on Switch is probably Dead Cells.
Yeah, I mean, like Hades, Hades 1 still runs really well on Switch as well.
To be
but
fair,
it's
Hades
just
1
never-
has some. It looks worse.
It does.
Significantly, but it does run good.
Thank God it has a nice art style.
And it's cross save, so great option to play it portably.
Oh,
Oh man, it is. I didn't know.
Yeah.
But now, but we're at a point now where not even the like. I'm going to keep coming back to Cult of the Lamb because I still think to this day
Because
it's
it's crazy,
such a
right?
baffling. Like, not to say that Cult of the Lamb isn't a pretty looking game. It absolutely is, but it is in fact a 2D game. A game that something like the Switch should have absolutely no problems
Yeah.
handling. But for some reason, it's bizarre.
Yeah, I feel like if Cult of the Lamb was a first party Nintendo game, it would run fine. But because it's a third party game and it's being, it's already been developed for PC and consoles and then being like optimized and ported to Switch, it gets that way. And I mean, like, I guess that could be an excuse, but I don't think it should need to be that hard for developers to get their games to run well on the console. It is, an extremely popular console that people want to play these games on.
Yeah. So that's power, I
Yeah.
think. I think there isn't a whole lot to be
I think we've
said
established
other
that we
than-
need to meet. Nintendo needs to be able to produce their first party games at a high enough frame rate that is locked. I think that high enough can be whatever you want it to be, but really we just need to not have an Echoes of Wisdom problem again. I think that's...
Again, I think
Yeah.
the sweet spot is some sort of eGPU capability for the dock, even if they don't sell it natively to the console and it's something you have to buy into separately.
Ah, no,
you
that
know?
should come with the console.
Yeah, it should come...
I
Yeah,
also
I'm
think-
of the opinion that
also
should come with
think-
the console.
No, I agree, but I'll even take that as an option over nothing.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
You know,
This is a little bit off track, but we were talking about it earlier. I was just looking up the current Switch prices. It seems like $320 to $350 is what I'm seeing for the OLEDs. So I would imagine that they're targeting that like $350 for whatever the Switch 2 is.
Yeah, Switch OLED's $350. I could see them stretching for $400 with relatively few issues. I don't think a lot of
because-
people would be.
I can't imagine that they'd go over that.
Yeah,
I mean,
don't know, maybe they could.
They have a
If
little
they-
wiggle room in terms of what, like a Series X and a PS5 or 500. Obviously, it kind of goes up from there when you get different models like the PS5 Pro. They have a lot of wiggle room in terms of still remaining cheaper than the other options
Yes.
out there. You know,
I think it is a goal for them to remain cheaper than the other options, though.
yeah. I
Well,
think the
it's a
question
plus.
is
I don't know that
if
for
they
sure,
want to
but-
hit. Like to me, what I think they probably want to aim for is the Series S, in terms of like pricing and power. Because Series S is $350 for a capable enough modern console that generally doesn't do 4K, but is 1440.
that's the thing. Capable enough for now.
For now, yeah.
Because that's kind of what the Switch was in some ways when it came out. Was like, it's okay for now.
Because like this is gonna be a weird analogy, right? To me, the Series S is sort of like the Wii U of this generation. Being, I mean that as a good thing,
Sure,
but it
no,
does sound
no,
bad.
continue.
Because the Wii U was sort of like a midpoint between 360 and PS4, Xbox One, and it was close to Xbox One and PS4, but not as powerful, and had tailor-made games. I think Nintendo aiming for a Series S, both price point and power point, with the concession of maybe less power because it's a handheld and doesn't need to have upscaling to 4K.
It doesn't have as much cooling just because of the size.
Yeah, like the size is going to come into play, and I could see them going for like, okay, we'll make it slightly more expensive than the Series S, but it's going to be as powerful, just really portable, right? I could see people wanting to pay for that, right? Where they're like, oh yeah, the $50 price difference, roughly as powerful, it's portable, great. I could see that being a big thing, but I think Nintendo would be really hesitant to hit above $399. I feel like that's their soft stopping point.
Yeah. It's the reality of like, we can always dream of a Nintendo console that's just as powerful as the other ones and it's handheld, but it's not going to happen.
But do we even want
You have
that?
to-
Like, that's the question, right?
I mean, I'd love it, but I really,
It's not gonna happen.
I'm not coming to the Switch to play, God of War. I'm not coming to the Switch to play
Nintendo's
Spider-Man
consoles
2.
exist as a method for their software, right? Like, it is entirely the console matters less than the games that you're playing, and the issue we're running into now is their games don't run on their own console, and that's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, even Breath of the Wild, when it came out, there was still a lot of talk. It was a launch game for the Switch. There was still a lot of talk about how well it runs on the Switch, which was at the time like absolutely brand
Yeah.
new hardware. I feel like that's something they have to avoid in the future of like, yes, it's not going to be as powerful as the other consoles, but we need to get away from having the discussion of, oh my God, this thing is way too weak. Like, it needs to be somewhere in that middle ground of like, we're okay with it not being up there with, Xbox Series X and PS5, but we shouldn't constantly be having this discussion of why doesn't this game run well?
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Breath of the Wild came out for Wii U also, didn't it?
It did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did
it runs better.
How did it run on Wii U? It does?
In some ways, not in every way. It's pretty equivalent.
It has to
but
be
it
at
is like
lower resolution though, doesn't it?
I don't think so. I think it's 720.
Is it 720 on? For some reason I was thinking it was 1080 on
It
Switch
outputs
when
1080 is not rendering at 1080 on Switch.
Okay.
The other thing too, and I also want to talk about Joy-Cons, but I do want to mention this too. One thing that is going to kind of plague the release of this new Switch, unless they got something cooking, it's going to be hard to follow up a launch game that's as good as Breath of the Wild, or was as big of an
I mean,
impact
Metroid
as
Prime
Breath of
4.
the Wild was.
Metroid Prime
If
4
that's a
is
launch
right
game,
there.
though,
I
if that's a launch game, we don't know. We don't.
I think
know.
it would be very silly of them to not have it be a launch game at this point.
I agree. I also think it's been a while since Mario Odyssey. They could have a 3D Mario cooking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see them doing a big reveal, because we have to imagine, like, they're going to do a Switch 2 reveal. That Switch 2 reveal is going to have games. Probably not many, but I would guess that we'll see a similar amount of games as the Switch 1. So that probably means we're going to get, like, 2 first-party things and a couple of third-party ports or something that is, like, major.
Watch
weird party game that no one wants to play.
Yeah, and a 1-2 Switch equivalent. We're gonna have that is gonna be there.
Here's another question: is this console gonna come with a Wii U style? Not a Wii U, a Wii Sports style like pack-in game?
It
should.
It should. I don't think it will, because they already had like the at least for the Wii Sports thing, they've already been selling separately the Switch exercise games.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're gonna package it with Ring Fit.
Then one more. Do you think when it reveals, are we going to get some bizarre little like Ubisoft game from like last generation ported to Switch?
Rabbids game. There's going to be a Rabbids game on it.
Oh, I'm talking like, are we going to get Assassin's Creed Valhalla on the Switch 2 or something like that?
I would be impressed by that. If the Switch 2 gets Assassin's Creed Valhalla and it's not a cloud version and it runs well, I would be impressed. That's a powerful console. But yeah, I think really they're looking at, like, they need to land somewhere between Steam Deck and Series X or Series S as a sort of point for both, I think, power and price. Of like, the Steam Deck is now the current big handheld trend, at least for people that want to play PC games, and that will run you about $400 if you're getting the lowest level model, up to $650 at the high level model. So you're looking at that $650 price point. If Nintendo can manage to stuff an OLED screen like they have for the Switch OLED into a handheld of a similar size at the price point of $400, I think they've done a really good job.
That's the other thing I wanted to mention. This version has to be an OLED model. There is no way
it's hard to give that screen
to an LCD, because that's the thing. Is that when the OLED came out, people are like, what the heck is this? We wanted to switch to, this is barely an upgrade. Yeah. Actually using the OLED screen makes such a difference. Like, I remember playing Hades like right on my Switch right before the OLED came out, And then as my Switch started to die, I switched over to an OLED, and oh man, it makes such a big difference. Like games look
Yeah.
better without actually looking better. It helps so much if you've ever seen the difference between an LCD and an OLED screen
Because
before.
OLEDs can do true dark, like they can fully black out pixels, which
And
LCDs
their
can't do.
energy saving too, because in order
Yes.
to achieve a like black color, the essentially the backlight behind the pixel just completely turns off.
Oh, that's cool.
So in a sense, it's why so many of our phones use a always on display where it just has the time and everything else is black, because it gives you information while also saving a lot of battery. So it kind of it helps with the Switch's battery as well. Maybe only marginally, but
Yeah, OLED screens are much more efficient. They're very good.
I just feel like
doing that.
from a consumer perspective thing too, they just can't go back, because why would you make a new console that's a step, in some regards, a step below the OLED
you
Switch,
say
which is
that.
essentially the Switch Pro.
You say that, and this is going to be a transition. You say that one could make an argument that the Switch controller, the launch Switch controller, was 2 Joy-Cons, which
Mhm.
in a lot of ways significantly worse than using a Wii U gamepad, which for all of its weird, quirky faults, still felt pretty good to use. And that brings me on to another thing: is them Joy-Cons need some work.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
Um,
they still getting even on the new and replaced version that I got after I sent it in last year to be fixed. I'm still getting the controller drift.
So okay, I want to say something
hmm
that may or may not blow your minds. I am someone who has constant technical problems, whether it's hardware or software. I have broken Ghost of Tsushima. I get
Mhm.
bugs in games that should not exist. My PC is in a constant state of disrepair all of the time. But I have never ever experienced stick drift in my entire life. Never. Not with with
Lucky
one
bastard.
controller I've ever owned. Never
I
happened.
I'm
I've
in the
had some for the
same boat
Switch.
as you.
Not
I
to a point
thought
where it's noticeable. Never.
I'm in the same boat as you, Wyatt. I thought I was getting it last week with my PS5 controller, but I think it was the game, because now it seems fine.
And that's not me
Yeah.
saying that it
So
doesn't exist, because it absolutely exists. I've just never
I
had
have
it
had it
personally.
Yeah,
in
you've
2
just
Switch
lucked out.
controllers, one of which was the one that came with my base console that I used for like 4 years. The Joy-Cons, not the Pro controllers. I've never had drift, but the Joy-Cons had gotten drift, and those I use those for 4 years, like all the time. So I'm not really surprised at that. It's just wear and tear at that point. But I had a like special Mario edition one. That one started drifting. And that one started drifting after like a couple months, and that's the one I'm disappointed about, because it's really cool, like colorway for the controller. The ones on my OLED, which they're the ones I got it with, those are not drifting yet, and soon to be good. The Pro controllers are good. The problem that I have with stick drift is this is my PS5 launch controller. Stick drifts. I have 2 other PS5 controllers that also have stick drift, so I get the problem way more with PS5 than with Switch. Which is unfortunate,
It's
because there's
kind
like
of a
nothing to be
problem
done
across
with
the
PS5
board, and
one.
I think it might be because if to my understanding, I think all manufacturers get the same like joystick parts.
There's a
the same
couple different
manufacturer.
types. Like the PS5 one is not the same as the Joy-Con. The Joy-Con is a very not low end thing, but it's not the type of sensor that works better.
It's also got to fit in that tiny little controller.
Yeah, it does. There are better options. They should be looking at Hall effect.
I'm sure.
Things, but
That's
they're
what I
not.
was about to say. I think I don't really know why they did this when the original Switch came out. You have those Joy-Cons. They're very like mobile grade buttons. Like they're very small and they're clicky enough, but they're not the most responsive or the most satisfying buttons I've ever pressed. They're like a hair too clicky for me. The D-pad is separated for reasons which I'll,
Yeah.
for multiplayer play, and the thumbsticks are so that like movement is so shallow, and they feel very like small, and they feel very imprecise, and I don't know why they were so afraid to just go with full fat thumbsticks if you're going to have a giant tablet game console anyway.
It's also, they could have gone for something like, I think the sort of resurgence of these like retro consoles coming out is kind of showing the way that they could have gone, which is I don't have one, like I don't
Please,
have any
no
of the fancier
C-stick.
ones.
No C-stick, please.
But they could have had like a lot of those, like the PS Vita style console we talked about, the Odin Mini, have better controls and a better thing. And like this is the basic hoary like split pad, which has a full thumbstick and it works really well. Granted, this thing doesn't have rumble. It's not a rumble capable controller, but it is otherwise a very good build, and I would have loved to see something like it for the Switch properly.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think improving
maybe
the
the Switch
controls would be a big thing, right?
And here's something where they have a really cool design that unfortunately comes at the cost of usability in some ways. Pulling off a Joy-Con to give to a buddy to play some games is a really cool feeling. It's super convenient. Um, but it comes at the cost of two things. One, Nintendo usually make the best D-pads on the planet. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
bar none.
the Switch
A lot
Pro
of companies have
controller
come
D-pad
close.
is incredible. It's so good.
I would say the Pro controller in general is incredibly well made.
It is
I
probably
would
my
say the
favorite
only-
controller, outside of the I wish the triggers were analog, but
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the triggers, but everything else about it, I'm a huge fan of. The D-pad that you get on Joy-Cons sucks. I hate that they're separate buttons. It just doesn't have that feel of a
Yeah.
D-pad. I'm playing, like I said, I'm playing some older Castlevania games at the moment, and it while it still feels better to use those than the thumbstick for 2D platformers and stuff, it's still not great. And I know why they did it. It's because they wanted to have 4 buttons that replicated the face buttons so that you could hand a controller off to
it
a
also
buddy
just
and it would be
doesn't work as
relatively
well.
the same experience, but it doesn't work as well.
It also makes
and
like
the other
playing a
thing-
fighting game on them is near impossible.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
very, very hard.
And the other problem is it you if you're in if and I think people who own a Steam Deck can kind of attest to this too, because I've experienced this on other things. If you have a mobile device, you got this giant tablet, this heavy thing in your hands, you want both thumbsticks on the top and then your D-pad and face buttons down below. It is so awkward. With an Xbox controller, with something that is like relatively small and not nearly as heavy as a Switch, I actually prefer the like offset thumbsticks. It's
Yeah.
just what I'm more used
Well,
to.
you
and I
need a
think it
couple of things,
feels
right? Like
nice.
the ergonomics need to be right, and I'm glad I had the PS Vita out because I like the PS Vita as an example of this because it has the sticks on the bottom, which is usually harder to get used to, I would say, for handhelds, but because of like the positioning of them and the way that this is curved, they work perfectly. Like your hands are gonna fall right onto them in a good way. Whereas on the Switch, that is not the case. You have to like crangle your
offset-
hands a little bit.
The offset thumbsticks for handhelds like that, I think, are just not. They're way too awkward.
Yeah, I'm okay with them, but I think I would have preferred if they were both on the bottom.
Because there's nothing stopping them from having the detachable like Joy-Cons that's like one half of it is a controller, while also not having to have them be like, oh, with one of them the kind of outside of the Joy-Con is going to be facing upwards while the other one is facing downwards.
Yeah.
It's a tricky thing. It is a tricky thing because you also have those bumpers on top, so you kind of need them to be on the inside. It's a nice feature, but
I think that's my biggest. The bumpers are my biggest complaint about the just slide them off and hand them to a friend Joy-Cons, because the most oftentimes I've done this, it's for Mario Kart.
It gets really
And if
awkward
you
to
didn't
use.
happen to bring the things that slide on and make
Why would
better
you have those
buttons-
with you? Why would you ever have those ready to go?
So, like, obviously, the idea here is you have come across a friend. You want to play this game spontaneously. You split the Joy-Con. You play the game on the train, on wherever you are, at the cafe,
On a
at your
flight.
friend's house who doesn't have the dock, whatever. But the left and right bumper button give my hands a horrible cramp if I hit them more than like twice.
how many times are people just gonna bring their own controllers with them anyway because they don't want to use half of a Joy-Con to play? Smash
That's the
Bros?
thing. It's like it's when the Switch first came out, I was like, oh, this is a really exciting idea, and I still really think the idea is solid.
It works great for
Or if you
games
guys
that
are
are
getting
motion
a
based,
Yeah,
but that's
cat,
very few
absolutely.
games.
So, but like at this point, I've had a friend ask me, "Hey, do you want to play Mario Kart?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, definitely." Ah, crap. We'd have to play split Joy-Con, and at that point, I'm just like, "Nah,
Never mind.
never mind."
I will like only play very specific games like that because of that.
Yeah.
I like playing some games split Joy-Con, just like instead of on a controller, I'll like spread way out across the couch or something.
Yeah.
Like
So-
I kind of like having them be able to split, but there's definitely some serious design flaws with them.
There's also
is it a feature where if they removed it in order to have better feeling Joy-Cons overall while it's in tablet mode, would you be okay with that, or would that be like, oh, that's kind of a missed opportunity not to bring those back? That's
I
my
th-
question.
I feel like I have a wishy-washy answer here. I feel like
Yeah.
I think it would be a missed opportunity, but I also would not be that sad.
I also wonder, like, if the point of the Joy-Cons is you can swap them. Like, I have that other controller one that is, you can't do that with those. They're not ones that swap like that. Just sell two. Like, have one that doesn't do that, and then sell the multiplayer controller, which is splittable like that. I think that's a great
Like a
solution for
Joy-Con
everyone.
Legacy controller or something, where it
Or
acts
just
more like
use the
like a
Switch
standard.
Joy-Cons. Like, if
Yeah.
you can use the
Or-
same rail system, like, just have these attached to it.
Well, that's the other thing I wanted to mention is I have a lot of issues with how Joy-Cons are mounted onto the Switch. I don't know if you've noticed this at all, but they really start to wiggle after
Oh yeah.
not even that
Mhm.
much time.
Yeah, I
and
found
it
the
makes
OLED is better,
playing
but
games,
the other ones are weird.
it's better, but it's not great. Part of what was in the most recent round of leaks for Switch 2, and this is also something that we've seen on other handheld PCs. I think the Lenovo, what's it called, the Legion,
Kind of see
whatever,
the level of
yeah,
wiggle that has.
it's not great. What we're starting to see now, and I think this was part of the leaks as well, and I hope this is true, is that they have some sort of like magnetic rail system, or at least have a similar rail system but use actual metal rails instead of plastic.
Yeah, the plastic
Just
feels like it
something-
wears.
Wasn't
Yeah,
there a design flaw? And I think they may have fixed this. I thought I remembered when the Switch first came out, there was something like, if you put this on the wrong way, it
Yeah,
gets
you could
stuck
put this in
forever.
upside down like this when
Yep.
because people didn't know how to do it, and it would kind of lock itself in. You couldn't break it that way. You just had to like force it out, which felt really bad to do. But it did work.
Did they fix that? Because I'm pretty sure I accidentally did that once and had no problem removing it.
Really?
Let's see. Yeah, they fixed it.
it
It
Ryan,
doesn't. It's not
okay,
working.
Okay.
Yeah, it just slides right out.
Bold move
We see Ryan break his Switch live.
on stream. Wow.
That'd be pretty funny.
Yeah, it works fine.
Well, we're talking about the Switch 2 anyway.
I also
think
have
bare
so
minimum-
I have one wish list item for the Switch 2. That is super weird, and I'm gonna be curious if any of you agree with me about this. So I actually find I like to play this in handheld, but when I'm playing handheld, it is more comfortable for me to have my arms in two different positions. Like playing like this, your arms get a little bit tired, right? Or you might be a little bit cramped after a while. I want to be able to do this, to have it hooked into one and play with the other in the other hand. Let me do this, Nintendo.
Is that not possible? I don't think I've ever tried it. But
So it works in a very specific way where it does not read as the same controller. It reads as you having one attached and one separated, which you can't use as a single controller. You have to. So I've done this on many planes. You slightly undo this one so it doesn't hold in, and like this feels terrible. This is not a good way to play the console that you have to hold it like that.
I hate that so much.
Oh my god.
I've got a
But
I've
it
got a
lets you
wish
do
list
that.
item. I've got a wish list item that's sort of related in the terms of handheld comfort. I don't particularly like or like, I don't know, if I have the opportunity and I'm on a flight or somewhere else, I
Mhm.
kind of like the idea of the kickstand on the back of the Switch. Then I can have my
Ah.
Joy-Cons detached. I can play them like a controller. I don't have to hold the console. I don't feel the kickstand feels super flimsy. I have never broken
Oh,
it.
the
but it
OLED
feels-
kickstand, they fixed it.
Have
Oh,
you
they
used the
fixed it.
OLED kickstand?
This thing's
It's
amazing.
No, okay.
glorious, and it's got so
Never
many
mind.
different angles to it too. It feels like if you ever used those Surface tablets before, it feels like
Yeah,
the
you can
kickstand
go like
on a
any
Surface
angle you
tablet.
want.
It's
great.
beautiful,
All right,
and it's
so
metal too.
I rescind my wish list item. I guess my wish
It's also
list item
perfect
is
because it
that
protects your SD card.
they keep
That's
it
your SD card
the
inside.
same.
Yeah, no, that kickstand, great. great. Keep the kickstand.
Man, you guys are making me want to buy an OLED Switch, but
OLED's worth a
I
good
just-
upgrade. Maybe hold off right now.
yeah, I'm not buying
Have the
one.
Switch 2 on the
I mean,
horizon.
it was perfect timing for me because my launch Switch was actually falling apart. I think I've showed Ryan before.
Yeah.
The thing was falling apart, and so it was like the perfect time. But yeah, I think just a lot of those improvements from the OLED, I think, kind of carry that stuff over because it just
Yeah, it's
helps,
great. They tend to work really well now.
modernize the. But I think going back to the mounting system, I think bare minimum, I want a metal rail system, which just adds durability. It makes things lock in place a lot nicer, and I think that way there's going to be a lot less wiggle. Which even if there's a little bit of wiggle, like it still really bothers me. Which is why I use like a hard case, one that like kind of feels nicer to use, just so I don't feel that wiggle when I'm playing in handheld mode. But I think again, not a hardware engineer at all, but I wonder if a metal rail system would feel better or some sort of like system that's based on magnets, like what we have with that Lenovo Legion uh handheld PC.
Yeah, just something that's a little bit stronger.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel quite as flimsy, even though I don't really think, like, I think it's strong enough because I've never heard of one breaking. Like, I've never seen someone actually manage to break that.
No, but it doesn't feel great.
But it does.
It doesn't.
It feels weird.
Yeah.
That they're not connected super strongly.
I'll say this too. It's nice that a portable console like that is thin. Make it thicker, just so that it's nicer to hold. I'm
Or just
actually
give it
totally
ergonomic,
fine with you.
like bumps or something.
I feel like a little bit thicker gives it. I don't know if this is actually like a hardware problem, but like I feel like the Switch does not necessarily seem to cool that well if you're running it in handheld mode for a long time.
Oh yeah, it's been really hot in my hands before.
To the
So like
OLED's
if
a
you can
little
make
bit
it
better
thicker
about that
and
as
give it
well.
like some
Mhm.
vent space or something, please do.
I do think, at least in my experience, my OLED has been better about cooling, but it is a lot newer than my old Switch was. My old Switch, I could like hear the fan like spinning its heart out sometimes, but I wonder if that's just because it wasn't functioning properly. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think something that gives you a little bit more, like the Steam Deck's a good example. It's relatively thin in the actual like base of it, but it's got a good like grip on it. Like I don't feel like I'm at risk of dropping this at all with one hand, despite it being much heavier than the Switch, because it has that like the bump that I can hold on to. I think the Switch doesn't need one that's that pronounced. Like the Steam Deck is very, it has a very thick edge because people know you're not going to be throwing that just in your pocket. But the Switch is already, like, the OLED is not small enough that I would throw it in a pocket anyway. So I don't think Nintendo needs to be quite so worried about getting just a little bit more space on the, like, controller side for you to be able to hold it. Or cool it better. Because I think the question will really be, how much of this do they want to be backwards compatible? Like, do they want the docks that you already have to be backwards compatible? Or is it just going to be Joy-Cons? Is it not going to be any of it? That's the stuff that's really up in the air right now.
The games need to be backwards compatible.
I think
that's the
everyone
most
is like,
important
if
part.
the games are not backwards compatible, that's a big failure in my mind.
There's
Switch-
already such a like loss in like games just sort of like going away and never being remastered in Nintendo consoles that it's got to be.
Oh god, there was something else I was going to say and now I completely forgot. Gosh darn it.
Well, we talked about a lot. I think we hit most of the very important notes there about specifically the hardware itself. Now, do we think Nintendo is known for having a gimmick with all their consoles? Is the Switch's already existing gimmick enough, or are they going to try to do something else?
I'd like to see what else they can do, but if it's the Switch 2, I feel like it has the same.
So let me throw it out there. I want a clamshell.
Yes,
dude.
I want a clamshell, and I want them to make it backwards compatible with DS and 3DS, which is
yes.
They're not going to do it, but I would love it so much.
Hey, maybe that would be their like Switch Lite alternative for this follow-up, is that they have purely one that's just portable and it's like a clamshell design. No detachable Joy-Cons, no hooking it up to the TV, but it's clamshell. I could totally see that. That would be super cool.
Yeah, I feel like that would be rad.
I already feel like the Switch is an evolution of so many of their gimmicks. So part of me, I think it's unlikely, but part of me wonders, is this the evolution of the Wii U gimmick too, where you can undock it and it's now on both the Switch screen and the TV screen?
That's spicy. That's a spicy one. I don't
Yeah.
know how that's getting to the TV screen if
I-
you've undocked it.
I really doubtful this works. You know, they would have to have 2 whole consoles.
I'm gonna
But
have
it's that kind of thing where I wonder if they may come back to an idea that they have since
Mhm.
left off,
Mm,
since
mhm,
the Switch is kind of a DS and a Wii altogether already.
mhm.
Oh,
So-
yes.
I'm gonna take a slightly different approach to it. I'm gonna kind of look at Nintendo's history here, right?
Yeah.
I
The Power Glove?
they're super. So they're listen. If the Switch 2 is just a Power Glove that has a screen on it, I'm in. I just
Yeah.
want to
Sold.
see
Pre-order.
wanna see where the wacky rabbit hole goes, right? My thing is when you look at Nintendo's history, they're like console gimmicks kind of in a lot of ways started with the Wii. You had earlier
Yeah.
consoles that had weird gimmicks, like especially the N64 had cartridges and those funky weird controllers. The GameCube had those adorable tiny little discs on them.
And funky
so
weird
they definitely
controllers.
and a funky weird controller.
Which is
Um,
the best controller design. I will defend that forever.
Ooh, okay, spicy, spicy. Don't disagree. But the Wii is where they started getting wacky with it, and they saw so much success in the Wii that ever since it feels like they have to have some sort of crazy gimmick, especially if they're not going to keep up with their competitors in terms of power, right? But I feel like in a lot of ways that's kind of had diminishing returns overall, right? They tried to do something weird with the Wii U. It didn't really work out. They couldn't really explain the utility of having a giant screen on your controller.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a huge disaster. And while the console kind of handheld hybrid of the Switch is really cool, it really limits what they can do power wise, right? I think the smart move, instead of moving on to some other crazy gimmick, is to really solidify what they have. Because, like I said earlier, they
Mhm.
still have a really good niche for themselves. As like there may be other handheld PCs out there, but they don't quite do what the Switch does, and they also don't offer first-party Nintendo games like a Switch does, unless you emulate it, which I don't want to get down that.
Yeah,
rabbit
that's a
hole right
whole
now.
other rabbit hole.
That's a whole other discussion. So I think the smart thing is to really mature and develop this niche that they already have versus trying to add on some other crazy gimmick on top of it, because I think it has a lot of room for improvement, but I think it has a lot of potential. So I think the smart thing is to just take this concept and really just kind of mature it and kind of work out some of those kinks. And I think that way, not only will they have a much better, it'll feel like a much more upgraded system than what you're already getting. I think that will also begin to bring back more third party support if they can have a console like this that is powerful enough to kind of lure major third party studios back to their platform, which they haven't had in the same way as the other
Yeah.
two consoles for quite a while.
Aside from Ubisoft's seen some value in porting things,
Listen,
but
Ubisoft ride or die Nintendo platform developers, all right?
Oh, you know
Yeah.
what? We can almost guarantee maybe not launch, but near launch on the Switch. Just Dance.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely.
They're still making that for the Wii, aren't they?
They
Oh my
are.
god.
They absolutely are. And that is so funny to me.
I guess it's got enough of an audience. Yeah.
Somehow.
Okay. So we talked about software. We've talked about the potential of a gimmick, which, yeah, I agree. I think it doesn't need a gimmick. I wonder if Nintendo can contain themselves.
Probably not. They cannot help themselves most of the time. For better, for worse.
Hey,
But yeah.
maybe we'll go way, way back, and this one's gimmick is going to be it's an arcade machine and eats a quarter every time you play.
Oh
No, no,
god.
That'd be
no,
great.
No. The console could only display black and red. We're bringing the Virtual Boy back,
Oh my
baby.
god.
Let's
And there's just a
go.
and
Oh,
there,
yeah,
there's a
here we
little
go.
goggle attachment sold separately that you
Yes!
can
I
just
was gonna
plug your
say-
eyes into.
And a stand so you can put it on your table and you can just lean into it.
Exactly.
Totally.
VR is
VR's a
viable
thing,
now.
right?
We're going
Like-
back. We're going back.
Oh my god. That's so funny.
So yeah, I think the next big question mark for them is games. We've got a lot of things on the horizon. Nintendo actually has a nice like little release schedule of their games that shows their first party stuff, which we've got this month, Super Mario Party Jamboree. Next month, Mario and Luigi Brothership, which I'm very excited for. Donkey Kong Country Returns HD in January, and then TBD next year, we have Pokemon Legends ZA and Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. Both of which I could see being launch titles. If they can pull that over. Presumably launching on both Switch and whatever else.
Pokemon can basically sell a console. I will completely admit that I bought a 3DS for Pokemon.
What would they make different with ZA, though?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, ZA is a Legends game, Legends. So they've been getting weird. The last two Pokemon games have been weird.
Oh, it's a Legends game. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like Legends Arceus does not play like normal Pokemon, and it's very fun.
I like Scarlet and Violet more than I like Scarlet and Violet.
I still think Scarlet and Violet is a marked improvement over Sword and Shield, but maybe not quite to the level of something like the classics that we all love. What I really want to see is them to have their like 3D equivalent of what Heart Gold and Soul Silver were just like incredible games. They still are waiting on that. I don't think ZA is going to be that.
I'm curious what ZA will be, because ZA is the third game that never came out for X and Y, kind of, in a way.
Yeah,
so
and the Legends title means it's going to play weird.
Like.
So,
interesting.
Yeah, I think it's a good opportunity for a launch title.
The first Legends takes place in a very different location, even though it is, I think, technically the same location as some of the other games. It's like in another point in time, so I don't know if they're doing that with ZA. And
it seemed a little cyberspacey, so I could see it being future, but that also is weird. Yeah,
I feel like that's weirder.
Who knows?
Interesting.
But potentially good launch title. I think Metroid Prime 4, to me, is the obvious slam dunk launch title. That's the thing that will sell your console.
They have been... It has been a while since we've gotten a proper 3D Mario, too. Like, if you had Metroid Prime 4, a new 3D Mario, and a new Pokemon game as launch titles, dude...
Rock solid lineup. And I'm going to throw a thing out there. Go ahead, Alex.
I was going to say, I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate for you, Ryan. As much as I am a huge Metroid Prime fan, and Metroid Prime 4 is probably my biggest looked forward to Nintendo game in the foreseeable future, I don't feel like Metroid or Metroid Prime is a seller for kids, and that is a huge market for the
So
Switch.
I agree with you, which is why I think Mario thing is very likely. Whether or not that is a launch title or soon after, because I feel like at this point it probably would be announced, but who knows? They've probably been cooking something up, so it wouldn't surprise me if that were a thing. And the fact that we just got Wonder, which is the 2D Mario, it's a weird position to be in, because Wonder, great reviews, came out really well. We're probably not going to get another 2D Mario for a while. And then we have a bunch of Mario spin-offs releasing throughout this year, so what is left for Switch 2? I think the only answer is proper 3D Mario, or weird GameCube-style spin-off. If we get Mario Strikers again.
Again,
because the new one wasn't great.
I could legitimately also see some remakes of Zelda or Mario games also being major sellers.
Wind Waker HD, Twilight Princess HD, they exist. They've been made for the Wii U, and they haven't been released, and we don't know why.
An HD Zelda remastered collection. Dude, come on.
It's crazy. They used to do them all the time. So many.
I bang on this drum anytime we talk about Zelda or Nintendo, because it is
Majora's Mask as well. They have a Majora's Mask remake that just is sitting on 3DS.
No, that's the thing. Especially if they can get the spicy 3DS versions, man. Oh,
Samus Returns as well. There's a bunch of stuff locked to 3DS. That's crazy.
Yeah,
and I would say, I mean, people still have their 3DSs. People still play them, but no one new is buying them.
Yeah,
but imagine
I don't even think they still make them.
But imagine those HD remaster on a nice OLED Switch screen. Oh,
perfect.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh.
A few other things that I think are probably coming back. I'm going to throw out two names that they haven't made games for in a little while. F-Zero and Star Fox. I think
I would
Whoa there.
love. I would love a new
Whoa
Star
there.
Fox
we've
game.
seen Star Fox show up. He was in Starlink. I think that it is possible that we get a Star Fox game. I think they've had it sitting in the back end enough that they might feel like it's time to revisit it. I
Why,
also
Star
think
Fox Zero wasn't good enough for you?
no, it wasn't. I also think there's a good enough chance of an F-Zero thing happening because
F-Zero has the best maps in Mario Kart.
yeah, I mean F-Zero. They've been continuing making the Mario Kart maps. F-Zero is a franchise that is still recognizable, even if it's a little weird, and I think it fits in a very different market than what Nintendo's usual games do. So, I could see F-Zero being a big hitter for them, especially because I don't think, like, maybe the weird call out I could see. What if they make a new Mario Kart? Right, like that's the Nintendo dropping a bomb.
I thought. Wait,
That's what I was gonna bring up
weren't they
next.
making the last Mario Kart where they were supporting it for a while with map packs and things like
yeah,
that?
they
Was
finished that. It's done now.
But that's
Oh,
the
okay.
thing. I don't think they can get away with re-releasing Mario Kart 8 again. I
Yeah.
don't think they can get away with that.
Especially if it's
again.
backwards compatible. It's already there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I
we're
would say that
assuming there's backwards compatibility. We don't know, but if they
Which,
don't,
if there's
there's gonna
not,
be hell to
is
pay.
insane.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think if there is not backwards compatibility, this console is dead in the water unless we get a new Mario, new Zelda, something big enough to really pull
They're gonna
people.
have to work a lot harder on the software front.
Yeah,
I would really argue too that there's a lot of games on the Switch, Smash Ultimate and Mario Kart in particular, that are currently like the I hate to reuse a word I just used, but the ultimate way to play those games. That are like Smash Ultimate is just every Smash game, like it has every map and every character. It's the
Mhm.
definitive way to play it.
Yep.
Whether, I mean, I'm sure we could get some people to argue for Melee or something, but essentially, if you're a new player, that's, it's got everything. And pretty much the same with Mario Kart 8. There's still some maps that aren't, but with the DLC, all the DLC from the Wii U and all the DLC from the Switch, that's a big game and like the ultimate way to play it. So it would be hard to argue. It would almost be like, I obviously want to see a new one, but hard to argue against 8 being at least playable on the Switch too, because they've put so much effort into making it the ultimate way to play
And I mean,
right now.
Yeah.
if it's backwards compatible, then that's not going to be an
That's
issue.
yeah,
People
that's
can
exactly
still
what I'm.
have 8.
That's what I'm saying. Then you can keep
yeah.
playing 8, and then you can make a new one, and then have the best of both worlds.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's really what they're going to have to do is to find, because I think, like you said, like Metroid Prime 4 is a big seller for adult Nintendo fans. It's not a huge seller for small Nintendo fans. And Pokemon's a big seller for small Nintendo fans. Pokemon Legends, I don't know where Legends falls. Who knows what it's going to play
We
like.
haven't seen enough.
Yeah, like, and maybe Legends will appeal to that same group, but I feel like Legends Arceus wasn't as big of a deal as the mainline games, and I feel like Legends EA might be the same.
If anybody knows this, did they ever do cards or an anime for the Legends
I don't know.
line?
Good question. I don't watch the Pokemon anime or collect Pokemon cards, so...
Hear me out.
I got
While
some
we're
text
talking
to send
about-
friends here.
Well, we're talking about software. Hear me out. Nintendo Advance Wars 5. Think
I
about
could
it.
see an Advance Wars.
Mull it over. Let's really think about
But
this
I
for a
think
minute.
Advance Wars has the same problem as Metroid Prime, and that's a big sell to adult Nintendo fans.
Yeah.
But I think what they're missing is the demographic that Nintendo typically is aimed at, which is younger video game players. Which to me, like, the main things there are Mario, Zelda, and the Mario spin-offs, like Mario Kart, Mario Party, and we're gonna have a new Mario Party very recently. That's coming out this year. We're having a new Mario and Luigi. There's a bunch of Mario remakes that just came out. So the only Mario thing that makes sense to me is either Mario Kart or 3D Mario. both of which would be great system sellers. But I wonder
You know what
where
would
those
be
are.
well, and while we're talking about older franchises that haven't had a game in a hot minute, be a spicy pick. Kid Icarus.
I would love a Kid Icarus game. Kid Icarus,
That'd be
the 3DS game is
spicy.
Pick,
excellent.
but
That'd be spicy.
so I have another idea, not really as a system seller. It's just tangential to what I was saying earlier. That I think they're working on the Summer Garden. I would like to see it be a console game if they're making a new console, and might sell some copies then. A digital version of the Pokemon TCG. They've got a digital
Yeah. I could see that.
There's a digital version on phone. It's controversial. It's not great, but they're working to improve it and flip that bad boy sideways, and you put it on the Switch.
There you go.
I could see that being very popular.
I remember back in the day when the original Switch was coming out, because they had just released Mario Run. I was like, yo, what would be really cool is if they had the premium version of Mario Run built into the Switch. So you could turn it sideways and actually use the touchscreen. It'd be kind of a cute.
Have you ever seen any
Has
game use the
I was
touchscreen
just
on the
gonna
Switch?
say that.
I have actually very recently. The Castlevania Dominus collection features all of the Castlevania games that were released on the 3DS, and because those games used the touchscreen in various ways, you can either hit the right trigger and use the right thumbstick to move a cursor around to draw things, or use the touchscreen, which is very nice.
Oh, neat.
Yeah. There's also a bunch of like interesting games that might be getting developed that we don't know about. So we know that the Kirby studio is working on something. We don't know what it is. I would say that's still probably a year or two off, considering
I
that
want mouth fuller mode.
mouth fuller mode. I don't think we know what Way Forward is working on either.
Oh, they're always working on a bunch of different
They're
stuff.
always working on a
though.
bunch of stuff, but they came out with their last set of things.
Yar's Rising was one of them. I wonder if Way Forward is still helping with development on Bloodstained stuff, because I know there's a Bloodstained sequel
Yes.
in the works at the moment.
Intelligent Systems, I think, is another one that we don't quite know what they're up to, but I would be surprised if they were done.
Oh, I know one thing they're always up to, and that's the mobile game that the one mobile game that I continue to reliably play. Fire Emblem Heroes, baby.
Well,
You
that's
gotta
the
play a
other thing.
proper
They
Fire
probably
Emblem, Alex. We
They
gotta
probably-
convert
I
you to three
tried.
houses.
I don't like proper Fire Emblem. The maps are too big for me. I don't get the tactics.
What?
I like the smaller unit movement.
I mean, they probably have another Fire Emblem game in the tank that they're working on. I'd be surprised if they didn't, because that series is still has plenty of momentum, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I imagine they are working on a Fire Emblem thing. They were also credited on Paper Mario Thousand Year Door remake, which I imagine didn't take a ton of time from them, so that's probably in whatever they were doing otherwise. So yeah, I imagine another Fire Emblem. We got one in 2023, which was Engage, which was sort of the like celebration game. But rumors were that that game was finished for a while. Like it was just waiting for the anniversary to release. Like it was finished for a year or so, or at least very close to finished. And it's also weird. Like it's not I would not call it a proper Fire Emblem. It is like a celebration game of the franchise with the way it works. So I expect they have whatever the next Fire Emblem mainline game is being built. Whether or not that's ready for a launch timeline for Switch 2, I kind of doubt. It seems like it might be a little too soon. I think Ubisoft might have something, but it will probably be a game that already exists.
I do wonder if EA is going to dump any of their sports games on there. They tend to do that for launches.
Yeah.
Is the new Prince of Persia game, is that available on Switch already?
Yeah, it's great. It is the perfect platform for that game. Runs very well.
Runs at 60 frames per second, almost solid, which is nuts.
Wow.
Yeah, very crazy. Mercury Steam, who does Metroid games, I don't think we know what they're working on after Metroid Dread. And I would say it's probably a safe bet that they're still doing Nintendo things, judging by the reception of Metroid Dread. So
Well, they did Samus Returns as well, right?
Yeah, which was before Metroid Dread. That was 2017. 2021 was Metroid Dread. So whatever they're working on, I would guess is coming kind of soon.
I could see them doing another remake of like Fusion or something, but
yeah,
I could also see them doing something new after Dread was well received.
Apparently they're working on something with 505 right now. I don't know what that could be.
Oh, interesting.
Refresh me. What does 505 do?
They're a publisher. They do a bunch of stuff.
A lot of recognizable names. There's also Level 5, which is interesting
Professor
to me.
Layton.
Professor Layton. They do the Fantasy Life games, which there's a new one coming out next year that got delayed, and they also are doing, I believe, Decapolice is them as well.
Oh, which also got delayed.
There's a theory behind the delays, Alex. The theory is that both games were delayed so that they could be put onto the next console and not the Switch itself.
If I can't play Professor Layton in the New World of Steam on my Switch, I'm going to scream.
Gotta get upgraded,
Backwards
Alex.
compatibility. I don't want to.
I thought you need your juicy frame rates. Your juicy little frame rates, Alex.
Yeah, I need my juicy frame rate for a point-and-click game.
You'd be surprised.
Here's a question while we're going through publishers and developers. Do you think, depending on how powerful this new Switch is going to be, do you think Panic Button are still going to be making Switch ports? Or Switch 2 ports, I guess.
I don't know. That studio has worked some black magic.
I don't know how they do what they do.
Switch.
It's kind of impressive, actually. And it makes Nintendo's recent performance issues with their first-party games seem a lot worse in comparison when you can get, like, Doom Eternal running better on the Switch than Echoes of Wisdom.
Yeah, I'll also say Monolith Soft is another big one. They're my personal favorite studio of the Nintendo bunch of support studios. They did support work on Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, but are more known, I would say, for the Xenoblade games and all the other stuff that they've done. So their timeline is lining up that I could see something being made for, if not 2025, 2026, because the last thing they helped on was Tears of the Kingdom. And they also released the DLC for Xenoblade 3 at the same time. Xenoblade 3 came out in 2022. Their typical dev cycle is 3 to 5 years, so they're falling somewhere in that range for something. Like I could totally see it, maybe like a smaller thing, like a Xenosaga remaster or something being released, but that would still do big numbers because those are very hard to find games. There's Xenogears remaster or remake would be great.
Ryan, this is a question for you. I know not all of Platinum's games now are made for the Switch, but Bayonetta is. And maybe, I don't think we're going to be getting a new Bayonetta game anytime soon, but do you think we're going to be getting another Nintendo exclusive Platinum game?
Maybe.
Perhaps?
So there's a few things. I believe Platinum bought out recently the Wonderful 101 IP.
Oh,
something.
Interesting.
I don't know what that could mean. Let me make sure I have my information. Yeah, Platinum Games acquired the Wonderful 101 IP from Nintendo, which I don't know what that could mean. Maybe they're trying to do like a multi-plat game with Wonderful 101 that I could see also being on Nintendo stuff. And that's a cool franchise that plays very weird. Bayonetta 3 was good, but not great. So,
did that side-scrolling baby Bayonetta game come out?
That not side-scrolling, it's top-down. That one was actually better received than Bayonetta 3 was. So, I don't know what they're working on. I could see them working on some smaller scale stuff. I don't know. Platinum's in a weird spot right now. I'm a lot less confident in them right now compared to what I used to be about them, because I think Bayonetta 3 is just a really shakily written game that
plus
the gameplay works
really
well though. So
what was that live service game that they had? Babylon's
Fall.
Babylon's Fall.
Oh my god, that was Platinum. That's right.
That was platinum,
Rebels
and the
Fall, the most
crazier thing was
ironic
that was
title.
apparently like what they wanted to do, which is
That's
even more
unfortunate.
surprising to me.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so they're in a weird spot. I mean, they still make great stuff, but their development history in the last couple of years has been really rocky. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're working on a smaller scale thing, or whatever wonderful 101 thing is that they're doing. And yeah, I think the other question too is we have a new Monster Hunter coming out.
Mhm.
Does Monster Hunter Wilds make an appearance on the Switch 2? Is there any
Ooh.
world in which the Switch 2 is powerful enough to run that game?
I'm feeling doubtful.
No.
I feel doubtful because apparently
I feel
Wilds is
like-
pretty taxing already.
I feel like the best we get is the PC-ish version of Rise.
Hey, I
Yeah,
would
I
Even
mean,
that
I'd be
is
happy with
could see
that.
them-
maybe a stretch.
I would totally be down for them releasing a like Switch equivalent Monster Hunter game.
Yeah, I don't see them leaving Switch behind because that is a very
No, definitely
lucrative
not.
market for Monster Hunters, the portable players, because those games still do incredibly well, especially in Japan. Whereas in the Western folks, we got a lot more home consoles here. We like our big, powerful games, so I wouldn't be surprising if they continue their like developing two different games, with like a 1 year apart cadence. I could see that totally being the case. And Nintendo's been doing a lot of like dredging the depths of their IPs, which is part of what makes me a little bit more, I don't want to say confident because it's the wrong word. I'm not confident at all that they're going to make a Star Fox or an F-Zero game, but it makes me more willing to accept that they could make those, and I think that would be a big win if they did one of them or both. I think especially space has been in the zeitgeist. Give me Star Fox. Give me some
Yeah.
Star Fox stuff. I would love it. Other than that, are there any other software things that we think the Switch 2 needs?
Even the mention
Oh,
of
boy.
a cart in the eShop completely broke Discord.
Yeah,
You know
Discord
how
fully broke our
Nintendo does
suggestion.
with their network code and everything. It's just
Oh, we
coming
haven't
over.
even talked about that. Nintendo online service absolutely has to be better.
Yeah.
You cannot get
I
away
don't
with
know
this
if
crap
that's-
anymore.
I don't know if that's anything console level versus just game level, but yeah, I agree.
That's game level. I mean, they've been getting a little better. You can at least play the new Mario Party online, which I'm hopeful will work really well.
Wow. Ooh.
You know, they said they have a cool mode where you play mini games with online people. I want to do that. Hopefully it runs.
That is a
doesn't
question I
crash.
do have, though.
It looks
That is
Splatoon
a-
has always worked. That's the weird thing. So it has to be a like per game problem.
That is a question I do have, though. The Switch's UI, I believe it doesn't entirely run on Android, but it does use like some of Android. I think it works fine for the most part. It's pretty like stripped back and kind of bare bones in comparison to what you get with other, um, consoles. But I think for the Switch,
It's
it
about as
is
functional
like,
as the PS5, I would say. Like, there's nothing crazy different.
it's not quite as smooth. Like transitioning to like
Yeah.
the PlayStation Store is a lot smoother than
I would
it
like
is.
themes. Like, I would like Nintendo to bring back their goofy themes so I can use
Yeah.
insane things. Give me a Mario theme for my
Or give me-
homepage.
Honestly, that would be great. Give me a full on genuine dark mode to pair with
Yes.
that OLED screen, which would be pretty sweet.
Yeah. I think a lot of the software side of that stuff could be improved. The store needs to be better because the store on Switch has a couple of problems. First of all, it
runs
runs
so-
poorly. Like
It runs
it
worse than
lags the
Echoes of
Switch
Wisdom.
like crazy,
Yeah,
which is wild
it's-
for a storefront to do. It
There
doesn't
is
have
no
a shopping
shopping cart.
cart. It doesn't have a shopping cart, and it's full of shovelware, which is insane.
there is some absolute trashware.
If you
on
go look at the
there.
new releases on Switch any week, you're gonna see the same games every week because there's like a couple of studios that just re-release the same like terrible shovelware games every week, and it's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, that needs to be fixed. They need to have better quality control, or at least better like visibility control, so I'm not seeing Clock Simulator X 100 times.
Oh my god.
Triple
I-
A
Clock
clock.
Simulator?
I'm like so confused as to who buys those shovelware games.
Like they can't make money. So
They have
I
to be
don't know.
making like one sale every year, but I guess maybe they're so shovelware.
I mean, listen,
Never mind.
it's a cost saving measure. They're not putting in that much if they can just re-release the same game every 2 days.
Yeah.
You're bound to
And
get a few
today's,
sales
you
eventually.
know, I'm giving them too much credit, but today with AI, I'm sure they're just, really phoning it in and,
Yeah.
asset flipping everything with AI and using some AI generated code. And
Oh, this is a bit
All
off
those
topic. First of all, keep USB-C charging. For the love of God, don't go back to some awful Nintendo
Proprietary thing.
proprietary garbage. Also, if we're going to keep the Switch design, USB on top, USB on bottom. Just so that you can charge it while it's in a kickstand, and it just gives you more options to charge
Oh, that's
it.
a good
Yeah.
point. I would say you could put it on the side, but
It doesn't.
yeah.
Not with the Joy-Cons.
Or I'm assuming the Joy-Cons stay at least to some extent.
and more internal storage.
Oh yeah, it's like a requirement to have an SD card, pretty much.
Yeah, I would like to see at least like 128 gigs being the standard for Switch 2.
If not more.
More would be nice, but I think more starts to balloon the price a lot.
Plus, Switch games tend to be fairly small in size anyway.
Yeah, but with a power increase comes a size increase as well. So
That's true. That's
I
true.
could see there being a need for at least 128, but I think the SD card slot is a good enough solution for that. Like that's on you then to increase the storage if you need to.
Here's a weird thing. The Switch is not really much of a multimedia device. I'm pretty sure it has like YouTube and Hulu, but it doesn't have all of like the streaming services and that kind of thing.
I think half of the
man,
streaming services that were on it got removed.
I used to love Hulu on Switch. I think they did remove it though, because it was so poorly it ran so poorly that it actually would skip the ads because it couldn't
Oh my
load
god. That's funny.
Would you use them though? For me, I don't really care. My Switch is my gaming console. I'm not really going to use it as like a dedicated like media.
But I do think
device?
there are points where like if the Switch could perform sort of like a budget tablet in addition to being a gaming console, specifically with things like media. Like I would love to get the streaming services on there. That would be great. Because I think there is just a use to having that stuff on there.
Mhm. I mean, it'd be fine with it. If it wasn't there, it's the kind of thing where, like, if it's there, hey, that's cool. I'm glad it's there. If it wasn't there, for me personally, I wouldn't complain too much. But I also understand that for many, many people, this is their only game console. And so having those options is probably going to be really beneficial.
And I think the
I
biggest thing that to me is a huge problem right now is the Switch doesn't have enough RAM. Specifically. So this is like we talked about chipset a little bit, which is what does the graphics and CPU encoding and whatnot. Typically it's a combined chip for a mobile device like this.
It's a SoC.
Yeah. But RAM and storage are both still separate, and the Switch only has 4 gigabytes of RAM. That's on the OLED.
Oh.
So I would guess that is where 90% of the issues in the store and whatnot come from of it not loading, is it just doesn't have enough RAM to store all the images and work well. Which, yeah, I think that if they can get that RAM up to at least 8 gigs, preferably 12, I think we'd be in a really good spot. Because modern consoles, I mean, that is a big limitation on any console, is RAM specs. And I believe the modern, like, current consoles have 16 gigs in their stuff, and it's not unrealistic to get 8 to 12 in a handheld. Yeah, modern
Absolutely.
consoles have 16 gigs, which is good. And yeah, because I think there's been like a big resurgence of retro handhelds recently. Like I have the Analog Pocket back there. You can like kind of see it sitting on the shelf back in the corner. And that thing's great. It's got great specs. It has a 1440p screen, which no Game Boy emulator needs to have, but it does.
Bold of you to mention these things in the same breath as Nintendo.
Well, so the reason I bring these up is I think they're a good price point comparison for the Switch, right? Like, what realistically could we get from a Switch 2 if Nintendo wanted to stay within that $400 range? Which I think would be their goal. I could maybe see $450 being a thing, but then they're getting really close to actual console price, at which point they're going to be judged pretty harshly. So yeah, I think that they're good comparisons. There's a lot of like Android devices around that price point, which are maybe not even always meant for emulation, but just meant for general Android stuff. And those have specs that rival the Switch, if not are better in a lot of ways. So I think they've got to find a way to get some of that power into the Switch. Yeah, like 8 gigabytes tends to be the standard for retro handhelds that are around the Switch's price point. So I would want to see at least that, and you imagine double the RAM is probably going to be enabling them to do a lot more stuff.
Yeah.
I have a sort of a thought that I was going on the retro game sort of train here. This is back to games I'd like to see. Obviously, they have all these games available if you have the Nintendo Pro
Online
membership or whatever, Nintendo Online. I can't remember what they call it, but yeah, you have access to all those retro games. I would almost love if they're not going to put those on the Switch 2, if they made like a cartridge, a disc, whatever, a game for the Switch 2 that was simply just a collected version of those.
That would be great. I would probably spend a full $60 on a, like, this is the Nintendo Switch N64 collection, or like Game Boy Advance collection.
The problem with that, though, is that they wouldn't put everything in one place. They would want to sell it to you piecemeal, right? They would
Which
want
then gets sketchy.
Collection 1, Collection 2, which is super annoying.
I don't think they're going to do it, because I think they're going to keep it as a benefit for being a subscriber.
Yeah.
So
it's
we'll
just
see.
it sucks for like game preservation. Like, you have companies like Nintendo putting every single N64 game that they possibly can on one, possibly two Nintendo Switch cards. You know?
It would be great.
I haven't taken a look
great.
at the 64 games in a long time. Do they even have some of the big ones like Ocarina of Time?
Added a couple. I don't think they added like a crazy amount or anything, but it's got some good stuff. Got a lot of
remember too when
the bigger
when the
names.
64 emulation, I guess is what you would call it, came out. I remember hearing some pretty heavy critique that those games weren't performing well.
I believe it's that they run pretty well now. I don't think there's any major issues with 64.
I honestly haven't thought about it since it released, so that's definitely possible, and I'm glad to hear. So
yeah, the list, at least according to their website, is not super long. Like, I know at this point they have quite a few NES and SNES games.
Yeah, the SNES and NES hubs are pretty big. They have a lot of GBA, up to GBA handheld stuff.
Well, then
yeah, they got some big hitters in the N64. They got Zelda and Majora's Mask, Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, and F-Zero.
Here's another question then. If the Switch 2 is more powerful and they continue making these sort of ports to the online service, do you think with the Switch 2 we'd see the introduction of some GameCube games in there?
I would hope so. I think GameCube would be the next step. I do think when we start getting into GameCube, I think we start getting into what Nintendo considers sell it individually territory.
As like remasters.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Yeah, like I think of the Mario collection, but I'm like, I would love if Nintendo would re-release some of the high ticket price GameCube games. Like, I still have a GameCube hooked up to my TV back there, and it's because a lot of those games are excellent and very timeless. Like, if they would start selling those digitally, even just like one per thing for a relatively reasonable amount of money, to me that would be like $15 to $20 per game. I think they could make gangbusters selling like give me Kirby Air Ride for $20 on the Switch, and I buy it.
Give me
instantly.
Twilight Princess.
Twilight Princess.
I've always wanted to play Twilight Princess. Yeah.
Twilight
great.
Princess is like the. I don't want to get too off track here. It's the one I played a lot as a kid, and so it's probably my favorite, despite it being the most bizarre.
Yeah,
Well,
I think there's a lot
Mass
they could do with
exists, I
those.
can't say that.
So I would want to see those. I do think it would be cool if they treated them like emulation games and gave you the stuff that the Nintendo Switch Online emulators have, like the fast forwarding and rewinding is super cool. That's a emulation feature that not many things have.
Yeah.
Just things that like make it more fun to play this stuff on the Switch than
Playing
on like
older
the
game was
safe state kind of
Yeah.
stuff too.
yeah, save states I think are a given, but the like fast forwarding rewinding is super cool and incredibly handy in some of the harder like NES games if you want to play through them but don't want to throw your console into a wall. Very handy. All right, anything else on our Switch 2 wish lists? Anything that we really want to see that we haven't talked about? Games, software, hardware. We talked about wanting a good screen. We talked about RAM. We talked about price point. Are there any accessories that you think it could use? Anything that would be fun to have?
I mean, keep going with the Switch cases. Those are always kind of fun to look at. I was about to say collect, but I don't really collect them. But they're fun to see all the crazy, wacky designs out there. I'm sure they're gonna do like their own version of racing wheels and that kind of thing. I'm trying to think of anything. I mean, if you wanted to go all the way, you could do like a Wii Zapper thing for Metroid, which would be kind
That'd
of
be
fun.
wild. I would take a light
Um,
gun if they made a light gun and released Time Splitters. I'd have a great time.
Do you think this is the time for them to go full in on, hey, let's take this Switch 2 tablet and strap it to your head for a VR thing?
I
God,
think they need
please
to,
no.
if that's the gimmick, I will be upset that they're wasting their money on that.
Oh God.
Because like
Can you
at that point,
imagine?
so for me, I get the VR things that Nintendo wants and like why they go after it, but they have to compete with Meta at the $300 price point, and I just don't think they can. Like I think there is no way that they can compete with the Quest as a headset, and so they should not try. Like just
No.
don't attempt it.
It's not their
It's not your strength.
No.
It will not work out in their favor, I think. Maybe Nintendo Labo comes back. Maybe we get some more Labo and you can build yourself a cardboard headset.
Oh
Here's the
my
thing.
god.
We were praising the Pro Controller. Are there any improvements that you want for a Switch 2 Pro Controller?
I would like one with back paddles. I think they could toss on some back paddles there for like an Elite Pro Controller or something like that.
I would want this even over analog triggers, headphone jack for the Pro Controller.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I
It-
really like that in my PlayStation.
It really sucks that when I hook up my Switch to my TV and I'm playing late at night, there is always going to be a risk of waking up my neighbors unless I want to hook up Bluetooth headphones, which kind of suck on a Switch anyway. So
I agree.
Um,
That would be cool to have. I think, analog triggers for me is a big one. I think those would
Also-
be really, really excellent.
Also, Pro controllers are expensive. Add some nice like rubber coating like you get on Xbox controllers. That would be actually kind of sweet. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, some of them are
actually adds a
textured.
lot
The
better
special edition ones have a little bit of like texture to them. It's not like a rubberized coating, but it's a texture.
Also, this is a personal thing. Nintendo, knock it off with convex thumbsticks. Those suck. Please, for the love of all that is holy in this world, do concave thumbsticks. They are always better, and I will always argue people who think convex is better because they're dumb and I hate them.
Convex is
Hey, what
only
about the,
better on the PS Vita.
They
What
suck.
about
Those
the,
suck too, and I hate them.
They're only
the
better.
GameCube one that has
on
all
the
those
PS Vita.
ridges on it.
That's the best one. Best controller. I don't care what anyone else says.
Yeah, you get the C stick though. It's a trade-off.
They do this weird like it's convex, but there's like a lip around it, so it's like kind of somewhere in the middle. Just do concave. It's so much better. It is so much better.
Yeah, I agree. I think the concave design is better. All right, so that seems like the gamut of Switch things. I think we've done it. I think we've covered the Switch 2 stuff.
My God, we've done it.
We'll probably end up coming back to this whenever they actually release, and we can look at how silly we were for even ever believing that Metroid would be a launch title or something. We're like, oh no, Metroid's coming out at Christmas next year, and it will not be a launch title at all.
That would be
It wouldn't
devastating.
surprise me. I'll be honest
Wouldn't
with you.
surprise me. It would be a real shame.
It would suck.
Because, yeah, I think the Switch 2 absolutely does need a good launch lineup. And hopefully stock that keeps up with demand, because that was a problem for the Switch when it launched.
Apparently, they've said that they have methods to avoid scalpers this time. I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah.
Hey, if they do, can they please share those?
It might
to
not
the...
even... Scalpers may not even be the problem. It might just be that there is too much demand for the things that they're doing. All right.
If they have ways to avoid scalpers, I think that should be made public information for both Sony and Xbox, and also maybe like Wizards of the Coast,
Just everyone. Just
Games
everyone,
Workshop.
Tell them how to avoid it. You know.
NVIDIA.
Yeah.
All right. So that said, let's jump into shoutouts. We did our gamut of Switch 2 things. We'll revisit this when it's getting ready to release. Who's got something ready?
I got one. I got one locked and loaded.
Alex, you're on deck.
Well,
Alex, go for it.
No, Alex,
no,
deck
he
means
said I'm
second.
next.
On deck
Wyatt.
means second.
Oh, sorry. So I don't know if anyone ever watched this show, either when they were a child or whenever, doesn't matter. But let me try that sentence again. I started rewatching a show with my girlfriend recently, who I think has seen a few episodes, but she's starting to get into it a lot. Has anyone here ever seen Warehouse 13?
Oh, I don't know. I've even heard of that.
Oh my god, I think I have.
Never heard of it.
A long time ago.
Was Control before Control was even a thing. It's kind of campy, kind of bad, kind of hokey, but oh my god, it is so much fun. It's basically two Secret Service agents, and they are assigned to this little known department that no one knows about in the middle of nowhere. And it's this giant warehouse filled with historical items that have magical abilities. And they're all based off of real people and different items. It's super cool. So, and they have so much fun with it too. There's like Harry Houdini's wallet that like tries to escape the warehouse constantly. Or one of the characters is playing ping pong with oh god, what's her name that wrote Alice in Wonderland? What's her name? I just saw this episode today. This is so
Lewis Carroll wrote Alice.
Lewis Carroll, thank you. He's playing ping pong with like a mirror that is mirroring him playing ping pong, and it's like Lewis Carroll's mirror and stuff like that. It's like all of these, they're so wacky and they're so funny, and all the characters are really likable. Again, it's kind of like dated and kind of campy, but it is so much fun to watch. And if you're into Control, it's really interesting to watch a show that feels like it does the whole Control thing before the game was even anywhere close to being out. The show came out in like 2009. It's so much fun. So much fun.
All right. Who's ready next?
All right, you said I was up on deck.
Yeah. You ready?
Remember your promise, Ryan. I'm gonna do an anti shout out and talk about the not mentioning brand name, but just the shouting out the canned bubble tea that I had today. Where
that sounds unfortunate.
The tapioca balls inside of it had the texture of instead of tapioca balls, raisins that tried to rehydrate themselves.
Oh no. Oh no.
That doesn't even sound healthy. That doesn't sound like they're good.
The liquid was great though.
Perfect.
Got another one. Oh.
What?
Why are you still drinking it?
He died. This is the last
Okay,
episode
Alex.
for Alex.
Jesus Christ.
What do you have for us? Let's get us out of this boba hellscape.
I'm gonna shout out to Vampire the Masquerade. I just realized a little bit in fear that next week on Sunday I'm going to be DMing a long one shot for my local store.
Very, very
I have not
fun.
DM'd that game before, so wish me luck. But I'm
How
excited
much
for
prep
it.
have you done so far?
We can move on. Ryan, did you give one?
Right. Hey, I have kind of a big one. It's in the description of all these videos. I work on Diablo 4, have been for a long while now, a little over 2 years, and we're releasing a thing. By the time this podcast is out, it will be out, unless you're watching us on Twitch. Vessel of Hatred coming to you on the 8th/7th, depending on where you are in the world. Reviews dropped, and it's a very strange feeling having reviews for your first full thing drop in game dev. So I'm just very riding the high of that right now. And the actual specific shout out is that I might lose the fantasy league now due to my own game scoring too highly. But yeah, opinions are my own and all that jazz. But all that's in the description, and yeah, I'm very excited for Vessel of Hatred. And I hope anyone who's playing Diablo 4 is gonna love it when they get the chance to jump into it. All right.
Oh yeah.
Hell yeah.
That's the end of the show. With that, we'll see you next week for more things, games, discussion, maybe playing some Dragon Age Inquisition multiplayer. We'll see if that lines up or not.
I love that that's still a thing. I don't know why.
I don't know that it still works. That's why I'm like, maybe.
If it is, then I love it.
I'm pretty
Why not?
sure it is.